Hi and welcome to ConfigMas. This is day 13 of our month-long user group party. I'm Johan.
And I'm Amy.
And today's topic is
Peer Cache. Now before you close that browser window, don't you dare. Peer Cache is actually a really cool peer-to-peer technology, and we're going to show you why.
Indeed. So first of all, when you work with Peer Cache, it's not like your old branch cache technologies used to be. With Peer Cache, you actually have to do a little bit of planning. It's really designed for you as an admin to deploy things in rings. So that means that you pick a few machines in every location. These are going to be your machines that you deploy to first. They're going to be your Peer Cache sources. And then you deploy to everybody else. So you want to make sure that the content is being staged on those boxes first. Now, that being said, there are some other things you need to know about the platform in the way how clients roam, etc. So, Amy.
Yeah, a little bit of understanding about how clients roam. That was actually improved in 1806.
Yeah.
Before it was done by Heartbeat, and that would take a little bit of time for things to happen. So 1806, they switched to the fast channel,
Yes.
which quickened things up to about 15 minutes. When a client switches to a new location, it actually triggers immediately, but then it takes about 15 minutes to report all the changes. So that's a little bit better than how it used to be. Also, with the fast channel change, it allows the peer source to show up online after the content lookup. So that's pretty shiny.
Yeah. So, and the general tip here is to the machines that you dedicate as your Peer Cache sources out there, pick machines that are not very likely to move around as much, like a desktop. They are normally not moving around that much.
Yeah.
So laptops tend to do that. So
another thing that you need to know about Peer Cache, especially if you're thinking about Peer Cache versus Branch Cache or Peer Cache and Branch Cache together, is that if you do have them both enabled, the Config Manager agent is going to try Peer Cache first. So Peer Cache will typically win for content, but Branch Cache will kick in and do the things that Peer Cache can't do, such as policy.
Yeah, and it will also act as a nice backup in the event there is no cache content that Peer Cache thinks it has.
Yeah. Eventually, it'll try the branch cache.
Yeah.
Peer Cache is also really good for content redundancy. I've talked to a lot of organizations over the years that are very interested in having a lot of copies of content out at locations when there's a high-impact job going on, for example, an upgrade to another version of Windows or a migration, something like that. Peer Cache is designed out of the box to kind of work that way with content redundancy. You don't have to do anything special to earmark content. You simply deploy it to your super peers.
Yes. So I've been talking now, or we've been talking about the Peer Cache sources. How do you define which machines are going to be in that first ring?
Well, the first thing that you want to make sure that you do is have your client settings turned on for your Peer Cache sources, and then you'll deploy those client settings to a collection that you've put your super peers in.
Yeah.
And that's all that you do to turn it on.
Yeah. So in terms of collection structure, you would usually have like each site would be a collection, and then you would have the Peer Cache sources collection, which would be a few machines on every site.
So I've done things a little bit different because I have a lot of stuff going on in my lab, but I have Peer Cache enabled in my Stockholm location. So I have Stockholm clients and sources. Now I do have kind of a 1-to-1 ratio of peers and super peers, or clients and super peers, but that's because I actually do a lot of heavy testing for OSD. So it's not uncommon for me to be spinning up hundreds of VMs and testing different things in OSD.
Yeah.
So be mindful of how you set it up. There's no reason to have a 1-to-1 ratio unless you're doing a lot of things like I'm doing.
Yeah, and whatever you do, do not enable every single client to be a Peer Cache source. That's not really a good idea at all.
No.
What you typically see organizations are using is maybe between, I've seen down to 5% up to 20% of their clients being a Peer Cache source. So somewhere in that range typically makes sense.
Yeah, and speaking of OSD, you should also know about this collection variable that you should set.
Yes.
And that is SMSTS preserve content, and the value equals true. And the reason you want to make sure that you have this variable targeted for your Peer Cache implementation is that you want the content that was served in WinPE to persist and exist in the full OS.
Exactly. Everything the sequence downloaded, it's kind of nice to have it stay there. And yeah.
And the nice thing about this is that it's not like how we do it with branch cache, where you have to have an extra step that copies the branch cache into full Windows. This variable takes care of that stuff for you. So the troubleshooting would be, did I set the variable or didn't I? Not what went wrong.
Yeah.
Along with it. So that's pretty great. I'm also glad that updates are available. What a perfect time.
Yes.
So anyhow, moving along.
Something I wanted that you can you go to the admin workspace, please? I want to show something.
Sure.
If you go to your boundary groups.
I would love to.
Stockholm it is. So in the options tab, this is where you can actually do some configurations that are related to peer cache. One, is it enabled or not on this boundary? But two, you can also restrict it to basically work like branch cache would, where you restrict it to a single subnet. And this can be very useful if you have networks that it's hard to manage all these boundary groups. I mean, one customer we've been working with, they have 5,000 subnets. On a scale, how fun would it be to create 5,000 boundary groups? Not fun at all,
Not
actually.
fun at all.
So for those kind of environments, it makes more sense to just, okay, fine. If they're on the same subnet, allow them to peer. And in the earlier days of peer cache, it was also that if you had a distribution point on the same subnet as the client would actually honor that one first. Now, we see a different behavior where it prefer a peer, but if you really want to, you can now revert that and say, no, if they are in the local subnet, I want them to use the server. So you do have the option and control now.
So another really cool thing about peer cache, if you have peer cache and branch cache together, as I said before, they do kind of work hand in hand, where peer cache will handle the content and branch cache will handle the policy.
Yeah.
And as you know, 1910 recently came out, so I upgraded all my clients in my Stockholm location. And as you can see, about 65% of the client upgrade came from peers.
Yeah.
I got 20% from the DP and 14% from branch cache.
Yes.
So if you look here at the breakdown, you can see exactly what that is in size. So I got 6 megs of policy from the branch cache cache.
Yeah.
So that means that all those clients didn't have to reach out and get policy over the WAN, which is super nice.
Yeah, that's cool. Something I wanted to show you also is, if you scale this up a little bit, Microsoft actually has a little blog post. And no, thank you, I don't want to fill that right now. But they wrote last year their journey to peer distribution. And that the image quality is interesting here. But what you can see is that in their environment, and they have a lot of clients, like 300,000 some clients. And out of those, about 200,000 were actually using content from their peers. And if you look at the percentage, and if you start to combine branch cache and peer cache together, they are well over, I would say probably around, if I do the math right here, around 93% from peers. And that's pretty amazing statistics.
Pretty shiny, yeah.
Yeah. So this is your goal, to reach over 90%. So it's certainly doable.
Something worth saying here, since we're talking about math, and I'm glad to go on the record to say this, is that peer-to-peer, regardless of what technology you're using, peer cache, branch cache, DO, it's not about speed. It's not at all about speed. It is 100% about efficiency.
Yes, not overload the WAN links and not kill the networks.
Exactly.
Trying to be friends with the networking team as good as possible.
Yep.
Yeah. One thing I stumbled across recently that I really wanted you to know is that peer cache don't like when content change. I'll give you an example. Say that Amy's machine here is a peer cache source, and I deploy an application to that machine, and the application run an installer, and that installer actually makes a change in the CCM cache folder where the package is, like writing a log file or just something, making a change. And now this machine wants that application. So the management point is going to say, all right, Amy has it. Oh, excellent. Amy, can I have your stuff? And Amy's machine is going to copy it over to me, including the changed file.
Yes.
And now my machine is going to do a hash check against the DP and say, all right, is the package intact? And it's going to say, nope, it's not. There is something different. So nope, not going to give it to you.
And the something different is the log file
that
was created.
So that can be worked around by making sure that your installers doesn't actually create the log files in the current directory of the setup. Store them somewhere else in a temp folder, whatever you store them. You can use wrappers. They can copy the installation file somewhere else if you cannot change the behavior. But just be aware that that's a bit of a weird and hard to troubleshoot too at sometimes behavior.
Yeah.
Other than that, for OSD, the variable that Amy mentioned before, make sure you set that one. Make sure you set the variable to also allow it to actually download in WinP. There's a variable for that. I have that one right here, the peer download one. And then actually when you are in WinP, you can just open up good old netstat. And it will tell you what connections the machine are actually using. And of course you have log files, etc. But this is just a good way to see that it's connecting to not the distribution point in this case.
Mm-hmm.
So highly, highly recommend. Get a lab going. Did you show them your fancy router?
I did not.
Can you open? So
Go to my gateway?
yes.
I would love to. You want me to connect to it or?
Yes, the settings, please. File settings. So this is key to start to play around and learn peer-to-peer technology. Set up a lab with multiple virtual networks, at the very least 2. So you can have a remote VPN clients, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, Amy is using a pfSense router, Linux-based distribution, excellent at routing. And to route traffic in between, and we can configure limiters and bandwidth control and just good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's it.
Awesome. So take PeerCache for a spin. Send us tweets of your client data sources.
Yes.
Want to see what that looks like?
Yes, we would.
And
Thank you.
we will catch you in the next video.
Thanks.